Garden Basics with Farmer Fred is brought to you by Smart Pots, the original lightweight, long-lasting fabric plant container. It's made in the USA. Visit smartpots.com/Fred for more information and a special discount. That's smartpots.com/Fred. Welcome to the Garden Basics with Farmer Fred podcast. If you're just a beginning gardener or you want good gardening information, well, you've come to the right spot. The healthiest foods you can grow in your garden are probably the greens. Things like lettuce, cabbage, chard, spinach, arugula. And they're at their most nutritious when they're consumed fresh from the garden. Today, Renee Shepard of Renee's Garden talks about the cut and come again leafy green garden, how anyone can be enjoying fresh greens on a daily basis, no matter how small your yard, even if it's just a patio. And if you want to make your own garden mulch from tree limbs, we have tips for purchasing a chipper shredder, the features it should have for a hassle-free experience. It's all right here in episode 282, The Cut and Come Again Garden. We're podcasting from Barking Dog Studios here in the beautiful Abutilon jungle in suburban Purgatory. It's the Garden Basics with Farmer Fred podcast, and we're brought to you today by Smart Pots and Dave Wilson Nursery. Let's go. One of the healthiest garden plants that you can grow are greens. But if you live in a hot climate, maybe you're limited to only growing greens during the cool season. Or if you live in a cold climate, it's your summer crop. But because greens are so healthy, you should be able to grow them year-round. And you know something? You can with the advice of our guest today. It's Renee Shepard, the founder of reneesgarden.com. She is widely regarded as a pioneering innovator in introducing international vegetables, flowers, and herbs to home gardeners and gourmet restaurants. She founded Shepherd's Garden Seeds back in 1985, and she sold the company later on, and then established Renee's Garden to do what she likes best, searching out the very best seeds from around the world, testing them in her own garden, cooking and developing recipes around their unique characteristics, and sharing them with other gardeners. I've been a Renee's customer for years and years and years. Love them, especially the Sunset Mix Sweet Pepper. And she's the one, Renee is the one who gave me a tip a few years ago when I was bemoaning the lack of cilantro to make salsa in the summertime. Cilantro here in USDA Zone 9 is basically a cool season crop, so you'd like to have some cilantro when you're making salsa in the summer when the tomatoes and garlic and peppers and onions are ready. Well, she said, well, all you got to do is cut and come again with cilantro. Just grow it in a shady spot. When it gets a couple inches tall, you cut it and use it. Isn't that right, Renee?
Yes, the cut and come again method gives you a way to get several harvests of a lot of things that really wouldn't be able to take the heat.
Actually, I think it's perfect for anybody who wants to garden, because with a cut and come garden of greens, you probably need, if you're starting it now, you'd need a shady spot to grow it in a large container, or if you have a garden bed. But I would imagine, too, in a sunny window inside, you could grow this.
Well, I'm not 100% sure that you would have great results on a windowsill because it needs so much more light. You might get one cutting out of it, but I suggest you grow it outside for the best results.
How about indoors with grow lights?
Indoors with grow lights, that's certainly a possibility.
All right. We've just sold some more equipment there. All right. But there's a lot of greens that take well to the cut and come again method. You have a YouTube video at reneesgarden.com that explains how you do that. So go ahead and explain for our audience how exactly you grow leafy greens that will come back after you cut them.
Yes, well, we think of the cut and come again method as the way to grow the most greens in the smallest space in the shortest time. So it works for all lettuce mixes. It works for spinach and chard and kale, Asian greens, a lot of different things. It's not just for hot weather. It's really a way to get a lot of results from a small space. And it's a different way of growing things. So either in a bed or in a large container, you get a seed mix, or you pour out the seed in your hand, you prepare the soil, and then you shake the seed through your fingers so it kind of goes in the bed like grass seeds, not semi-packed, but you try to spread them out, ideally so the seeds are half or an inch apart. And then you water it up, and when it gets about 4 to 5 inches tall at the most, you want to take a kitchen scissors or a snips and just cut off the top inches, leaving a 1-inch crown. So you want to leave a 1-inch crown in the ground and cut the rest. So you have 3 to 5 inches of greens, and you harvest as much as you need for a meal that day. In other words, the greens are going to come up densely, and if you wouldn't grow them to maturity because they were way too crowded and they wouldn't grow well and they get long and lanky. But if you harvest them at the baby leaf stage, they're young and tender and delicious. So let's say you had a bed a couple feet on a side, like 2 or 3 feet across and 2 or 3 feet wide. You could grow enough mesclun mix or baby lettuce mix to give you a lot of meals, and you'd cut as much as you needed. After you cut it, you fertilize again with a high nitrogen fertilizer like fish emulsion, if you're an organic gardener, which we are, and then get a second growth. In really hot weather, you would not get a third growth, but in the cool season, you can sometimes even get a third cutting. So it's cut and come again.
And how long does it take to produce the first crop, and then how long is it before you get a second crop?
I would say for the first crop, you're talking 30 to 45 days. And for the second crop, it depends on the weather, but probably another couple weeks.
Would you grow it in sun or shade?
If it's very hot weather, I would certainly grow it where it's in afternoon shade. Or you can also cover it with shade cloth. But I'm not kind of claiming that you're going to get much of a crop if it's 100 degrees and baking in the sun. But I have seen growers in California up in the Sonoma era grow it under shade cloth, which is, mesh that you cover your bed with that reduces the amount of UV going in. But generally speaking, if it's getting really warm, then you should ideally grow it where it gets morning sun and afternoon shade. In the cool season, it doesn't really matter. It'll grow just fine. And I would say up till late spring, as soon as the weather starts to cool down.
I really like the idea of using the shade cloth for a very different reason. To keep the pests away, to keep the aphids, the whiteflies, the cabbage looper moth from laying eggs on those greens.
Well, the other nice thing about using cut and come again, you're only growing something 4 or 5 inches tall, and you're growing it thickly. So they don't get as much pests because they're not in the garden long enough. You know what I mean?
You have a lot of different mixes that you can use, and I imagine that you can kind of mix and match all the various spicy greens or just, shall we say, more, I don't know what you'd call it, mild greens that would be very nice in especially very colorful as well in a salad mix or however you want to use greens.
Let's say you have 2 containers or 2 places on your on a bed. Grow one to garden mesclun or baby leaf lettuce, or which is all kind of sweet reds and greens that are either smooth and buttery and crunchy. We make up our mixes by growing the varieties individually and then combining them, so you've got not just flavor and color but good mouthfeel, because you don't want all soft lettuces and you don't want all crispy lettuces. It's nice to have both. So you grow one, let's say we're talking about lettuce, you grow one baby leaf lettuce mix, and next to it you can grow, we have a spicy greens mix that has arugula and mustard and spicy things. And then you go out and say you want to make a salad for dinner, you harvest 2/3 lettuce and 1/3 spicy greens, so you can tailor it to your own taste. And you can certainly grow arugula as a cut and come again, and you can grow, lots of different things. Arugula is very fast growing. And frankly, it's not bitter when it's young, so you want to harvest it at no more than 4 inches.
And even at that height, though, the plant has developed its own character. It's got that shape that you recognize. It's going to be very colorful, too.
Well, most stores now sell mixes of baby leaf. So everyone knows what that is. But you can also buy baby kale and baby arugula. All these things can be grown in the cut and come method yourself. It's much cheaper and it's really easy to do, especially for people in limited spaces. You can grow a really nice salad garden and greens garden in containers in this fashion.
I would think then if you can get maybe 2 or 3 crops out of a cut and come again bowl of lettuce or a portion of a garden, that you'd want to have about 2 or 3 going, maybe plant the second batch a week or 2 after the first batch.
I would say a couple weeks. But, you don't have to have a big patch because it produces a lot of quantity of greens. So it's a good strategy for having long-term salad.
I noticed in your video when you were harvesting the greens when they're only 4 or 5 inches tall, all you did was you simply grabbed a handful of it and then cut it 1 inch above the soil line beneath your hand and took that in for dinner.
Yeah, you wrap your hand around a bunch of tops and you cut underneath your hand, leaving 1 inch, and then you take that in for dinner, exactly as you say. That night, it's really tender and delicious when it's fresh. And here's the other thing. It's really tender and delicious. Just make a real simple vinaigrette, just, like mild rice vinegar or whatever kind of vinegar you like, and really good olive oil, and that's really all you need.
Oh, speaking of that, you have recipe books.
Well, that's true. We have a huge trial garden where we trial and evaluate new varieties and grow many different kinds of the same variety. So we've always come up with recipes on what to do with it. Because if we have convinced you to, say, grow radicchio, you're going to need some radicchio recipes. And if you grow pole beans and you've used up the 3 ways you always make beans, you might want some new ideas. So the cookbooks I've written are all alphabetical by vegetable, so you can look up whatever you're harvesting.
And you can find those cookbooks online at renesgarden.com.
We're growing lots of basil. We plant a second crop of basil, so we'll have it ripe when the tomatoes come.
There you go. Yeah, that's and basil can last quite a while as well. I'm always amazed at parsley because it's a biennial. And so you can get 2 years worth of harvest from that.
Well, that's true. We usually plant 2 crops a year. So when we're in zone 8, we'll overwinter, and then we plant another one. So yes, I like Italian broadleaf parsley better than most other herbs. It's my favorite. It's very healthy too and tastes so good.
Not only that, but in its second year, when it does start to flower, it attracts a whole host of beneficial insects.
Yes, and that's certainly something that a lot of gardeners are really getting into, is seeing their gardens as a way to create backyard habitat and encourage pollinators and solitary bees and all kinds of beneficial insects and songbirds, not just feeding them, but feeding nature. It's really important and something all gardeners can really do.
Behooves every gardener to build the Good Bug Hotel.
Well, absolutely, but that just means plant lots of wonderful annual flowers that they all can feast upon.
That's right, and a wide variety of plants, too. You want birds in your yard? Well, have some evergreen shrubs where they can hide out in.
Yes, I think thinking of your garden as a habitat and source of food and pleasure, not only for you, but by everything that surrounds you in nature, is really an important concept, because I think we are the source of a lot of habitat in our suburban and city gardens more than we know, and it's becoming more and more important.
Anything else you want to cover in this?
This is kind of the height of we're getting into the real end of summer, so as soon as the weather starts to cool down would be a good time to launch another round of cut and come again. It's something you can do really quickly and easily, and if you're a beginning gardener, it's a great way to get going. And besides lettuces, because I mostly talked about that, but you can it really is fun to grow baby chard and baby kale, which is really more tender than mature kale, and spinach, and so there's really quite a few greens that can be grown in this fashion.
Is green kale, in your estimation, tastier than ornamental kale?
Oh, about 1,000%.
Okay.
Ornamental kale was bred for ornamental purposes, mostly in Japan originally. It really is designed to be pretty. Is it also edible? Yes. Is it delicious? Not particularly.
We should point out that at renesgarden.com you can find all sorts of seeds available, mixes available for the container kitchen garden. So indeed, if you do have a limited space to work with, maybe a sunny patio or less, there's a lot of good mixes that will work for you in containers.
Yeah, we kind of specialize in varieties for containers. So we have container chilies and container peppers and container cucumbers and container eggplants and container zucchini. A really nice French variety that really does well in a container. Container watermelons, lots of these container cut and come again mixes, because that's something we really look for. And our other varieties all tend to be, in vegetables at least, varieties chosen for wide adaptability and great flavor, because we eat them ourselves.
You test them yourselves, too.
Yes, we have a large trial garden both here in Northern California near Santa Cruz and also in Vermont.
Talk a little bit about the Ortolana de Faenza zucchini, and I'm sure I butchered that name.
That is not the container variety. That is a very traditional Italian striped zucchini, and it is characterized by a very nutty taste, just really sweet and nutty and custardy. It's a very delicious one. The French seed that we get, which is the container variety, is called Muscat. And then last year we introduced the opposite, which is a climbing zucchini, which will crawl up a trellis. And I really like, because then you can break off the fruits off the vine standing up. You don't have to go bending over and trying to find them, and they don't hide. So we've got one for a zucchini for any use.
The climbing zucchini, by the way, has the obvious name of Incredible Escalator.
Yes, it's from a German company, and they just had a number for it, so they allowed me to name it, and since it moved quickly and up, I thought I'd name it Escalator.
Well, just in my own defense, I am growing that Ortolana de Faenza zucchini in a large barrel, and it's doing just fine.
That's one of my favorites, actually, flavor-wise, and they make just beautiful fruit. And if you roast them whole, they're just, and with olive oil and garlic, they're just delicious. Or any other way you can think to enjoy them, they're just really, really excellent flavor. Container zucchini works well because it's non-vining. It grows like a bush, and the zucchini are all easily pickable, and it's a very beautiful plant. It's very ornamental.
I would be remiss if I did not ask you at this time of the year, what can you do with an overgrown zucchini that you found hiding under the leaves?
Well, I don't get them too often because I'm too greedy. I always go out and look almost every other day. I am not an expert on overgrown zucchini, so I don't think I'll have anything really new and exciting to tell you. You can cut them in half and scoop out the insides and make a filling with the zucchini inside sautéed with rice and Italian sausage and basil, and then stuff the shell and bake it, topped with olive oil and a little, Italian kind of seasonings. That's nice. I guess
I'll just continue feeding the big ones to the worms.
Yeah, or get a neighbor with chickens.
There's that.
Will be very, and I would say that is the highest use of overgrown zucchini, is trade them with people with chickens in return for an egg or two once in a while.
Oh, I used to trade them to the neighbor's cows.
Well,
Yeah.
Amen.
Yes, to that. Fall is for planting. August and September is for planting. And think about what your family will eat. Try some new varieties as well. Don't start too big. Start with a small patch if you've never grown something before. See if your family likes it and experience something new. USDA zones 9 and 8 and even 7 can have a cool season garden, perhaps with some protection, but there's no reason why you can't be out there gardening most of the year.
Well, I do have to tell you that I used to get invited to this one family's Thanksgiving feast every year, and I really never saw them much and didn't know them very well, and I couldn't figure out why they so much wanted me to come to Thanksgiving, and I found out it was because of the fall garden produce I bought. So there you are. I brought a great big salad with all those wonderful fall greens, and that's why they invited me. So obviously everybody can grow lots of delicious things for fall. It's really worth doing and fun, and it's easier because as the weather cools down, there's less pests. Things stay well in the garden. You can have a whole nother crop of root vegetables, lots of greens. Some of the healthiest things can be grown in the cooler fall weather, and they don't take as much energy because there's not as much weeds. Actually, the easiest time of year.
Exactly. And with your international expertise in the world of vegetables, the wide variety of bok choys, of Chinese cabbages is amazing.
Yes, we've had more and more Asian greens just because they're fast and easy and so healthy. We really try to look and feature things that are high nutrition. Most of all, deliciousness is our highest criteria.
There you go. Find out more at reneesgarden.com. Noted seedswoman Renee Shepard has been our guest. Renee, thanks for all the good advice about the cut and come again garden.
Well, thank you very much for talking with me. I've really enjoyed it.
You've heard me talk about the benefits of Smart Pots, the original award-winning fabric containers. Smart Pots are sold around the world. They're proudly made 100% right here in the USA. Smart Pots is the oldest and still the best of all the fabric plant containers that you might find. Many of these imitators are selling cheaply made fabric pots that fall apart quickly, but not Smart Pots. There are satisfied Smart Pot owners who have been using the same Smart Pots for over a decade, actually approaching 20 years. When you choose Smart Pot fabric containers, you know you'll be having a superior growing experience with the best product on the market. And your plants will appreciate Smart Pots too. Because of the 1 million microscopic holes in Smart Pots, your soil will have better drainage and the roots will be healthier. Those roots won't be going round and round on the outside of the soil ball like you see in so many plastic pots. The air pruning qualities of Smart Pots creates more branching of the roots, and that'll fill more of the usable soil in the Smart Pot. Visit smartpots.com/Fred for more information about the complete line of Smart Pots lightweight, colorful fabric containers. And don't forget that /Fred part, because on that page are details of discounts when you buy Smart Pots at Amazon. Maybe you want to see them before you buy? Not a problem. Smart Pots are available at independent garden centers as well as select Ace and True Value hardware stores nationwide. To find a store near you or to buy online, visit smartpots.com/Fred. Smart Pots, the original award-winning fabric planter. Go to smartpots.com/Fred for more information and that special Farmer Fred discount. Go to smartpots.com/Fred. You have a small yard and you think you don't have the room for fruit trees? Well, maybe you better think again, because Dave Wilson Nursery wants to show you how to grow great tasting fruits like peaches, apples, pluots, and nut trees. Plus, they have potted fruits such as blueberries, blackberries, raspberries, boysenberries, figs, grapes, hops, kiwi, olives, and pomegranates. These are all plants that you can grow in small areas. You can even grow many of them in containers on patios as well. It's called backyard orchard culture, and you can get step-by-step information via the Dave Wilson YouTube videos. So where do you find those? Well, just go to davewilson.com, click on the Home Garden tab at the top of the page. Also in that Home Garden tab, you're going to find a link to their fruit and nut harvest chart. You can be picking delicious, healthy fruits from your own yard from May to December here in USDA Zone 9. And something else you're going to find in that Home Garden tab. You're going to find the closest nursery to you that carries Dave Wilson's quality fruit trees, and they're in nurseries from coast to coast. So start the backyard orchard of your dreams at davewilson.com. You've heard me talk about the benefits of mulch for years and years, how piling up arborist tree trimmings for mulch can improve your soil. You have a healthier garden. We're talking with Brad Gay. He owns JB's Power Equipment in Davis, California. What are the benefits of owning your own chipper shredder?
The big thing, if you're into gardening or if you're just starting out in gardening or whatever level of gardening you're at, the chipper shredder is going to give you a means of changing the soil quality of your garden. And you're going to be able to get rid of stuff that you would maybe put in a container the city or county would pick up, or you would have to haul off. And you can maintain your yard and get rid of your trimmings, your limbs that have fallen down, and chipping them up to a size that is used as a mulch or as a top dressing. You can, any of your trees, limbs that have fallen, you can have those, you can chip those up. You can make your own mulch. If you're just even small, like for pots, just get your you can get mulch and create a good high quality mulch. And I can't think of anything better to accomplish that than a chipper shredder.
Chipper shredders are great, especially if you have a lot of trees on your property and you're constantly pruning your trees. Instead of, like you say, instead of throwing those branches away, chop them, shred them, just add them to the top of your soil, and a 4-inch layer of mulch on your soil. It moderates soil temperature. It inhibits weed production. As it breaks down, it feeds the soil, making it richer. It's amazing, too. If you put 4 inches of mulch or even 4 inches of shredded leaves on your garden surface over the winter, and you go back in the spring, you move it aside, you dig down a few inches, you'll be amazed at the number of earthworms that are saying thank you to you for doing that. And earthworms improve the soil, too.
But that's the sign of it. I mean, I've been doing my garden. I've been doing this for 20, 25 years, and I can go out. I don't have weeds, for one thing, but I can actually go into my soil, even, after it's been watered and have had tomato plants in there. I can still take my hand and kind of move it into the soil because it's porous enough that, because of the mulch and all the good ingredients have been added to it to amend it to be able to do that. It takes a while. So a good chipper shredder is a very good start of getting good quality soil going for you.
So let's talk about chipper shredder basics, what people should look for when buying a chipper shredder. I would, of course, recommend buying it from a known entity, some company that you've heard of before that has produced lawn and garden equipment, as opposed to going online and seeing a bunch of names you don't know. But when you're looking at the specs of a chipper shredder, what are the specs you should pay attention to?
Well, the big one I look at is what's driving your chipper, what's driving the shredder parts. There's usually two different entities there that are combined. And one is a wheel, typically, that has a cutter blade, probably about 4 inches long, but it's a very hard steel, probably two of them on this, what I call a wheel. And then the other part is on the other side of it has a bunch of little like edger blades that are on small half-inch shafts that spin around, and they will shred leaves. But the chipper part is very important because that wheel that you have on there that's holding those blades, you want that to have some weight, because when they have that weight on there, that's what's going to pull the limb in and chop it up. If you notice, if you have somebody in your neighborhood who's been around and you'll hear that whirring sound that's going on, they have this huge flywheel that's turning that. That's the chipper, and it has some pretty good-sized blades in there that can eat up like a 9-inch limb or something like that. But you can get that same technology as a gardener for your smaller chipper shredder. And I usually recommend about a 40-pound flywheel will be just about a good place to start. And a lot of people, you have to look in to see if that entity exists on what you're going to buy. And you're not going to get it in your cheaper versions, like you say. You'll get something that's labeled a chipper shredder, but you're talking about things that I've been there. And believe me, I've had things that have turned my fingernails black and blue because I'm trying to force a limb through there like I've got a baseball bat hitting against a steel post. It just rattles your hand. So you want to get something that's got a big flywheel, 40 pounds plus, and it'll help suck those limbs in through with very little effort and grind up a hard wood versus a softer wood. Does a great job.
What size diameter branch can a 40-pound flywheel handle?
Well, depending on what you've got, usually I'm going to say 3-inch.
Mm-hmm.
In some cases, it's 4-inch. I think on our BCS, you can take a 4-inch limb on there. But what's nice is you can take a good 3-4 inch limb, shove it down into the chipper shredder, and I usually get it to where it is to the point where now you're having the branches which would have leaves or smaller limbs, and then when it gets to that point, you can take it out and then pick it up and put it over into your shredder, and then that shredder will go in and take care of the rest of the stuff, the smaller limbs. If there's leaves on there, it'll take care of that as well. And it just turns it into a finer mulch. And a good chipper shredder it will actually have plates where that mulch exits through, after it's been chipped, through a grid. And you can put in whatever size you want in there to make those pieces what size you want. Or if you're just doing corn stalks and you just want to reduce, like you grew corn, now you've got to get rid of these stalks when you don't want to throw up in your green waste. Well, you can shred that down. Well, I take that grid out just to beat them up to go, so I can actually work it back in there. But they do have grids that you can install, and it can make that mulch whatever size you want. It's actually a nice feature, and that's what's pertinent in getting the good soil and mulch that you want for your gardens.
You brought up a very good point there, and the fact that we've been talking about, chipping and shredding tree limbs, but for your vegetable waste in your garden, your corn stalks, or even your tomato branches, you could put those through a chipper shredder, probably the shredder section.
I take all my grape. I've got these runners off of my grape. I have a fence it's a 300-foot fence that goes alongside of my yard, and I put it all into grapes, and it's all table grapes. So, how grapes are one of those plants where you can literally watch it grow. So you've got these runners that are, 10, 15 feet long. And I'll just cut those off in the fall, and I'll bring those over and get rid of all of that. And you have to make sure when you're using your chipper shredder, by the way, if you're doing this, because if you put a bunch of these grapevines that you're sticking in your shredder, it's like sucking spaghetti into your mouth where the spaghetti starts spinning around and flipping and everything, except this is like a whip. So you got to have eye protection, hearing protection, long sleeves, leather gloves, so that you don't get smacked. And it gets rid of a lot of stuff you just never thought of before. All your fruit tree trimmings, when you go and prune trees in the winter to get things ready for your peach trees and apricot trees, all those trimmings you can put through a chipper shredder too. And what you have in piles there will reduce it, at least 12 to 1 or more. It's amazing what comes out after you do that.
I would like to reinforce your safety comments, because anybody who's ever owned a chipper shredder and attempted to throw in some smaller but long branches, like grape branches, for example, yes, they will whip at you because of the friction, the sucking action of the shredder that just basically tries to suck it all in. And in the meantime, you've lost hold of those branches and they start whipping around.
Oh, yeah, you just let it go. I mean, it just starts going, shoo, shoo, shoo. It's like I've got a bunch of whips around. So, yeah, you just want to protect yourself. I would say protect yourself like you're going to go into a beehive. You don't have to have that big beehive helmet on, but, have eyeglasses on, a helmet or a hat or something. I wear headphones for my ears just for the noise and all that it deals with. So I protect myself quite well when I go out there.
Well, and if you please do wear gloves and take off any jewelry or wristwatches you might have as well.
Oh yeah, keep track of your pruning shears too.
Oh, God, yes. Yeah, don't keep your eyeglasses in your top breast pocket.
Yeah.
It's follow all safety instructions when you get a chipper shredder. So, all right. So safety is paramount. The cost of a chipper shredder is not cheap, but I'd rather see people invest in a chipper shredder than a rototiller. More and more research coming out about rototilling soil is that it does the soil no good at all. You're better off doing no tilling whatsoever, and more farmers are going that route as well. So take that money that you might want to spend on a rototiller and put it into a chipper shredder. What is the price range for a decent chipper shredder?
Well, they start at about I'm going to say about $800, $799 as entry level if you get a Bearcat, and you're in the 2-inch to 3-inch chipper shredder range. I recommend. I mean, that's light use, and that's a good starter, and certainly will do the job, but it doesn't take care of what the next level is, which is about $1,200, a little over $1,200, $1,269, and it will take on a 3-inch limb and do everything I've been talking about. And it's something that, I've had my chipper shredder for years. it's got to be 25 years plus. And you just have to maintain it. But it's one of those most useful things when you need it. And then you don't have to deal with a pile of trimmings and try to get it to the garbage can or get it out of your yard onto the curb if they still do that where you live, or have to haul it off somewhere. No, you can take that and make it into a very useful product that'll benefit your own garden. So, yeah, so anyway, it starts about $800, and you can go up to, in the 2 to 3 inch, up to a little over 2,000. If you go into 4-inch and higher, then all of a sudden you get into the $3,000 range.
Talk a little bit about the different brands that are available. You mentioned Bearcat. I own a BCS, and they are both high-quality chipper shredders.
Oh, BCS is an excellent chipper shredder. That's what I have. Now, BCS America site, if anybody wants to go into it, that is a great site just to visually see what a chipper shredder can do for you and your garden. I mean, it's amazing. The gentleman does the video in that, he incorporates a lot of stuff in the mulch and cardboard, for instance. He's taken cardboard, newspaper, and then his leaves and limbs and everything else that's been debris that normally you would throw in a trash can or you have to get rid of it somehow. So, or leave it in a big pile and let rodents get in there and habitate it healthy. But the best way is run it through a chipper shredder. But that's a very good video. If you can just go into that site, BCS America, a very good quality chipper shredder. Bearcat is very good. We also sell DR, which is Country Homes products. They offer very good chipper shredders. We have accessibility for Bearcat locally. So if people want something that they can actually come in and buy it locally, I can get that rapidly. If I have to get DR in, that takes usually 7 to 10 days. And BCS takes me about 5 days to get their stuff. So, but those are 3 of the top names that are out there that I would recommend.
When one goes online and sees the array of chipper shredders, they're going to, I think, see the majority of them, unfortunately, are electric powered. I don't know if unfortunately is the right word or not, but it just seems to me that a gas powered chipper shredder has more power than something that's powered by 110 volt electric.
We used to sell the electric. This was some years ago. And in Davis, there was a viable means because most of the gardens there are, relatively small, I would consider. And they were using it for table scraps and clippings and leaves and stuff like that. And they worked well, but the problem with it is you had to fit it in a slot to get it to go down into a chipper shredder contraption. And it's about the orifice. Oh, that slot I'm talking about was the size of about medium-sized book. It was only like 2.5 inches wide, and maybe 12 inches long. And it was like, so now you're trying to squish things down through this slot to get it in there to work. They've improved it quite a bit better, but I know with gas-powered, a lot of my problems are if you get something in there or you get too much in there and it starts to plug up, and then you need to stop it. Gas power, you can shut the engine off, but if you cause that thing to run and not be, actually turning over, you can cook those motors pretty easily. And we found that there was not a substantial amount of electric failures, but it's like an electric lawnmower. If you use an electric lawnmower and you're out there trying to cut grass that's 12 inches tall, you're slowing that motor down a lot. Those motors overheat, and because you're plugged into the grid, it's just endless energy, and those motors are overheat. And so I don't give them a real thumbs up on quality. I know electric products have really kind of taken over the imagination of most people out there as far as tools and that, but I don't think this is money well spent, at least at this point.
And with chipper shredders, you want to follow all the instructions in the booklet that it comes with. And you mentioned a problem that all chipper shredders have, be they electric or gas, is they can sometimes jam up. And yes, very important to turn that motor off as soon as you sense that it is not chipping or shredding.
Yeah, you'll lose a belt or you'll cook a motor is what will happen if it's electric. But the belt, for your, because if you lose the belt, now you're done. Now you got to go get a belt, which, we stock belts for what we sell, and we have access to them fairly rapidly, but you're done for the day. You just don't go down to a hardware store or a auto parts store and buy another belt. That's just not going to happen. So it's, you got to stop those things relatively quickly.
All right. Chipper Shredder, great investment for making your own mulch from not only tree branches, but your garden, your grapevines, your corn stalks, any sort of woody material can become your mulch in your garden.
Oh, yeah. It's tremendous, yeah. I would recommend that. I agree with you about the rototiller and the chipper shredder. I would spend the money on the chipper shredder first, and then if you need a rototiller. I use a rototiller, but I've got a pretty good sized piece of ground, but it's not used as much as I did before. I don't need to do that as much.
We've been talking with Brad Gay from JB's Power Equipment in Davis. Chipper shredders, every gardener should own one. Thanks, Brad.
Thanks, Fred. Good talking to you.
In the September 8th, 2023 edition of the Beyond the Garden Basics newsletter and podcast, we chat with the forward-thinking garden author, Robert Couric. I like to call him the garden contrarian. And he once again lends credence to the saying, everything you know is wrong. In this case, it's his much broader definition of organic gardening, or what he calls cradle-to-grave organics. If you're looking to have a more self-sustaining garden, one that uses fewer store-bought fertilizers and soil products, you'll want to hear what Robert Couric has to say. If you're already a Beyond the Garden Basics newsletter subscriber, it's probably in your email waiting for you right now. Or you can start a subscription, and it's free. Find the link to the Beyond the Garden Basics newsletter and podcast in today's show notes or on the Substack app. Or you can sign up at the newsletter link at our homepage, gardenbasics.net. Many areas of the country suffered through prolonged heat waves this summer. And now your fruit tree orchard might have problems. We have ideas on how to help your fruit trees get through next year's heat waves. You've seen the bags and boxes of fertilizer and soil amendments that say, now containing mycorrhizae. Is that a good buy? Debbie Flower gives her take on that. Also, she has tips for thwarting deer in your garden. And we talk about a garden tool that can blow your fallen leaves into a pile, then suck them up, and then grind them up. And that's perfect for topping a garden bed with leaf mulch for the fall and winter season and beyond. It's a combination portable leaf blower, vacuum, and leaf grinder. Where was all this information? It was in episode 236 from last September. It's one of the most listened to podcasts in the Garden Basics series, Heat versus Fruit Trees and Deer Control. It's our flashback episode of the week. Give it a listen, episode 236. Find a link to it in today's show notes or at the podcast player of your choice. And you can find it at our homepage, gardenbasics.net. The Garden Basics with Farmer Fred podcast comes out once a week on Fridays. Plus, the newsletter podcast that comes with the Beyond the Garden Basics newsletter continues, and that will also be released on Fridays. Both are free, and they're brought to you by Smart Pots and Dave Wilson Nursery. The Garden Basics podcast is available wherever podcasts are handed out, and that includes our homepage, gardenbasics.net. And that's where you can also sign up for the Beyond the Garden Basics newsletter and podcast. That's gardenbasics.net, or you can use the links in today's show notes. And thank you so much for listening.